Picture yourself standing before the Great Pyramids, maybe, or staring at those intricate hieroglyphs, or perhaps even the mysterious Nazca lines way down in Peru. Doesn't your mind just race with questions?
Absolutely.
Doesn't a part of you wonder if there's more to the story than we've been told by, conventional history? This enduring idea that advanced extraterrestrial civilizations might have visited Earth in the ancient past, maybe even shaping human development.
Yeah.
Well, it's a really captivating claim. It pops up everywhere in pop culture, right? Books, TV shows, the works.
You really can't escape it sometimes.
Exactly. So today, we're embarking on a deep dive into that very idea. Our mission really is to peer through the lens of these popular theories. We're drawing directly from a whole stack of sources that compile these ancient alien claims and, crucially, the rigorous scholarly responses to them.
Which is key. You need both sides.
Absolutely. You'll hear the most compelling arguments for ancient visits, and then we'll methodically unpack the counter-arguments, the archaeological evidence that, well, truly illuminates these long-standing mysteries. We're going to look at how biblical narratives have been reinterpreted, scrutinized those iconic Egyptian artifacts and structures.
Oh, yeah. Egypt's a big one.
Definitely. And consider monumental architecture from diverse cultures across the globe, and ultimately assess the overall reliability of these ancient alien interpretations.
Precisely. And this deep dive isn't just about, listing claims. It's about dissecting specific examples. We'll move from biblical interpretations, like Ezekiel's really vivid visions.
That's a classic.
But all the way to the monumental Moai of Easter Island and the enigmatic, almost impossibly precise stonework of Puma Punku in Bolivia.
Puma Punku.
We'll rigorously consider the methodologies behind such extraordinary claims against, the backdrop of established scientific and historical understanding. The goal, really, is to equip you, our listener, with a clearer, more informed perspective, to allow you to weigh whether these historical records genuinely point to extraterrestrial contact, or maybe something else entirely, perhaps something even more incredible about, human ingenuity.
So if you're ready to explore some truly breathtaking ancient feats and maybe challenge a few modern assumptions along the way, let's dive deep.
Okay.
Let's unpack this. So where did this whole modern ancient astronaut narrative, this idea that advanced beings from another world visited us ages ago, where did it really take root? It wasn't just like a sudden burst of collective imagination, was it?
No, not at all. It was quite deliberately built up.
Right. It was meticulously codified and then popularized, mostly in the mid-20th century, by a handful of really influential figures. Their books just captivated millions and basically laid the groundwork for everything we see in popular media today, like that Ancient Aliens show.
Exactly. That show owes a huge debt to these early writers.
And the most prominent, I think you'd have to say, is Erich von Däniken.
Oh, definitely. Chariots of the Gods. Huge impact.
Huge. His central thesis, laid out in that book, is kind of elegantly simple, isn't it? Ancient humans, just unable to comprehend advanced technology, perceived these extraterrestrial visitors and their incredible devices as, gods. Divine beings.
Yeah, they just couldn't process it otherwise, according to him.
And he didn't just pick a few examples, did he? He seemed to reinterpret a vast, almost overwhelming amount of historical and archaeological stuff to fit this narrative.
He really did. He cast a very wide net.
Like, he provocatively argued that ancient religious texts, the Old Testament, even the Sanskrit epics from India, weren't just mythology or allegory. He saw them as literal, maybe distorted, but literal historical records of alien encounters. And maybe his most famous biblical reinterpretation involves the prophet Ezekiel's vision, that really complex, strange vision.
Wheels within wheels, yeah.
Exactly. Von Däniken said, look, this wasn't divine revelation. It was an eyewitness account of a spacecraft landing.
A very specific interpretation.
And he looked at other big biblical events too, Sodom and Gomorrah. He suggested maybe it was a nuclear bomb dropped by aliens.
Wow. Okay.
Beyond texts, he pointed to ancient artifacts, claiming, for example, those Japanese Dogon figurines, the ones, bulky, big eyes. He said they were actually representations of astronauts in spacesuits. And controversially, he claimed certain carvings in an Egyptian temple looked like helicopter-like machines.
Yes, the Abydos hieroglyphs. We'll get to those.
Right. And then the big stuff, the pyramids, the Nazca lines, the Moai on Easter Island, he argued they were either built by aliens or by humans using alien tech and knowledge. because supposedly these feats were just beyond ancient human capabilities.
That's the core assumption running through it all, isn't it? They couldn't have done it.
It's quite a sweeping vision, and at its most extreme, von Daniken even, floated the idea that aliens manipulated early hominid genetics to create Homo sapiens.
That's taking it pretty far.
Then you've got Robert K.G. Temple, his 1976 book, The Serious Mystery. It presented a very focused, but, well, equally controversial idea.
Focused specifically on the Dogon people.
Exactly, the Dogon people of Mali, West Africa. Temple claimed they possessed this extraordinary ancient knowledge about the Sirius star system. Specifically, that Sirius was binary. It had a companion star, Sirius B.
Which is true, but hard to see without telescopes.
Right, and that Sirius B was incredibly dense, a dwarf star, and that its orbital period around Sirius A was precisely 50 years. Now, what made this so mysterious for Temple and for his readers
was that Western astronomers only confirmed this stuff much later, right? In the 19th and 20th centuries, using powerful telescopes.
Exactly, long after the Dogon supposedly knew it. So Temple believed this knowledge could only have been given to the Dogon by, get this, amphibious extraterrestrial visitors from a planet orbiting Sirius.
Amphibious aliens.
Beings the Dogon called Anomo. And he tried to link this Dogon tradition back to ancient Egyptian and Sumerian myths. And another key figure, maybe slightly different angle, but similar framework, is Graham Hancock.
Right. Fingerprints of the gods. Not explicitly alien,
but shares that idea of external influence, yeah. Hancock attributes the sophisticated achievements of various indigenous cultures, megalithic building, advanced astronomy, not to aliens, but to a mysterious, external, highly advanced human source. A lost super-civilization wiped out by a global cataclysm.
Kind of an Atlantis-type idea, but global.
Exactly. His evidence includes really speculative interpretations of things like the Peary Race Map. He claims it shows an ice-free Antarctica, which is geologically impossible for that time. And he relies heavily on this fringe geological theory called Earth crustal displacement.
Ah, yes, the idea the whole crust can just slip suddenly. Highly controversial, scientifically speaking.
Very, but it's key to his idea of how this advanced civilization vanished. And finally, we should briefly mention Zecharia Sitchin. He developed his own incredibly detailed, unique narrative.
Based on his translations of Sumerian texts.
Which are themselves controversial translations, it should be said. Sitchin claimed these ancient tablets described beings called the Anunnaki. They were supposedly inhabitants of a hypothetical planet beyond Neptune, which he called Nibiru.
Nibiru, the 12th planet in his system.
According to Sitchin, 50 of these Anunnaki came to Earth maybe 400,000 years ago.
Right.
Mine gold.
Gold. Always gold.
Apparently. And when the labor got too tough, Sitchin claimed, they genetically engineered Homo sapiens, he called us, the Adapa, or Adam specifically, to be their workforce, laborers.
So we were engineered as slaves to mine gold for aliens from Nibiru. That's quite a story. What's truly fascinating, though, and maybe the critical insight here, is how consistently you see this common thread running through all these theories. Even though the specifics differ, aliens, lost civilizations, gods.
Right, the pattern.
Exactly. Each proponent starts by finding some historical or archaeological mystery, a text that seems too advanced, a building too complex, knowledge that seems out of place. Then, almost without exception, they dismiss the documented capabilities, the ingenuity of the actual indigenous cultures involved.
They downplay what the locals could do.
Precisely. And from there, they jump straight to the conclusion. Only an external, technologically superior force could possibly be responsible. Aliens, a lost race, whatever. This pattern just repeats itself again and again. And this approach, well, it's faced heavy and pretty consistent criticism from scientists and historians, basically from day one.
People like Carl Sagan pushed back hard, didn't they?
Oh, Sagan was very critical. He, along with countless archaeologists and historians, meticulously pointed out that the conclusions drawn by von Daniken, Temple, Sitchin, and others are often based on, frankly, faulty or sometimes even fabricated evidence.
Fabricated, really?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay.
Or just deeply flawed interpretations, illogical premises, and a profound misrepresentation of the actual archaeological and historical record. This idea that ancient peoples were just too primitive to build pyramids or understand astronomy. It's a recurring theme.
It's kind of insulting, actually.
It is. It really diminishes their true ingenuity, their remarkable adaptability, and the complex cultural development that mainstream archaeology has spent centuries documenting. It effectively, well, robs our ancestors of their own incredible achievements. #2. Unpacking biblical interpretations of alien encounters.
Okay, so let's dig into some specifics now, starting with the Bible, which, maybe surprisingly, has been a pretty fertile ground for ancient astronaut theorists, right? Finding passages they believe describe alien tech, not divine acts.
Yeah, it's definitely a source they return to often.
And here's where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit imaginative when you look at it through that particular lens. One of the most cited examples, almost a cornerstone of the argument, is the prophet Ezekiel's vision, that incredibly vivid description in Ezekiel chapter 1.
The fiery chariot, the creatures, the wheel.
Exactly. The claim, pushed hard by von Daniken, and surprisingly even supported by a NASA engineer named Joseph F. Blumrich in his book The Spaceships of Ezekiel.
Blumrich, yes, that
Yeah.
gave it a veneer of scientific credibility for some.
It did. The claim is that this passage isn't divine revelation at all. It's a technical description of a spacecraft landing. Blumrich, who apparently started as a skeptic, argued his engineering background let him see technical details that theologians just missed in their spiritual readings.
So interpreting religious scripture is an engineering blueprint.
Pretty much. They interpret the wheel within a wheel that could move any way without turning as a blueprint for omnidirectional landing gear.
Oh.
The four living creatures with wings and multiple faces, not angels, they argue, but the craft's structure, maybe rotors, maybe landing struts, the brilliant light, the fire, the deafening sound. That's just a primitive guy trying to describe rocket propulsion.
Trying to put advanced tech into ancient words.
Right, and when Ezekiel says he felt the hand of the Lord on him, theorists suggest that was just him describing the intense G-forces during takeoff. So Ezekiel wasn't a prophet receiving divine insight. He was just an awestruck witness to tech he couldn't comprehend, using the only words he had.
But the scholarly and theological rebuttal, that's quite different. And it's really deeply rooted in the historical and cultural context of the Bible itself.
Not seeing spaceships there?
Not at all. Theologians overwhelmingly view Ezekiel's vision not as a technical manual, but as a divine throne chariot. It's a profoundly symbolic representation of God's glory and sovereignty.
A symbol.
A powerful one. In its original context, the vision shows God's glory leaving the temple in Jerusalem and symbolically joining the exiles over in Babylon. This is understood as both a judgment on Judah for their sins, but also, really importantly, an act of profound compassion. God was still with his people, even in exile.
Okay, so it's a theological message, not a UFO sighting.
Exactly. It's a powerful spiritual statement, packed with layered symbolism, not a blueprint. The language Ezekiel uses is very consistent with prophetic, apocalyptic literature of that time in the ancient Near East, which often used highly symbolic, evocative imagery to convey divine messages.
Okay, moving on. Another dramatic biblical event often reinterpreted this way: the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Fire and brimstone.
Right. Von Daniken famously suggested these cities weren't destroyed by God, but by a nuclear bomb.
A nuclear bomb. In ancient times.
That was his idea. Other proponents have linked it to maybe a cosmic impact, like a meteor. But what does the archaeology say? Findings at sites thought to be these cities, specifically Bab, Edra, and Numera, near the Dead Sea, they offer a different picture.
They were destroyed violently, though, right?
Oh, absolutely. The ruins show overwhelming evidence of destruction by an enormous conflagration. There is a debris layer about 3 feet thick, but archaeologists found the fire seems to have started on the roofs of buildings, especially ones used for burials.
Started on the roofs.
So the evidence confirms a massive fire, yes, but the specific cause. Beyond just a devastating conflagration, it's not definitively stated in a way that points to, nukes or alien weapons. It's consistent with a catastrophic fire, but the trigger, well, that remains in the realm of theological or perhaps natural explanation, not necessarily alien tech.
And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, these biblical interpretations really highlight this significant recurring tendency among ancient astronaut theorists,
Which is?
to project modern technological understanding, modern scientific concepts, onto ancient texts. Instead of analyzing them within their original cultural, historical, and linguistic contexts.
It's like putting today's glasses on ancient history. Anachronism.
Exactly. It's anachronism. It strips the texts of their original meaning and overlooks the really rich symbolic and metaphorical language that's inherent in ancient religious writings. And beyond Ezekiel and Sodom and Gomorrah, these theories get even bolder. Some proponents, like Barry Downing, a Presbyterian minister back in the 60s,
Wrote the Bible in flying saucers.
that's the one. He argued Jesus was an extraterrestrial being whose miracles were just technological feats.
Wow.
The concept of hell. Maybe it's a literal description of Venus's scorching surface shown to humans by ETs, God and Satan. reimagined as competing alien factions disagreeing over whether humanity should get access to knowledge, kind of like the Prometheus myth.
So the tree of knowledge was alien tech.
That's the line of thinking. Even original sin gets reinterpreted as the consequence of descendants of ETs mating with early hominids, and the Great Flood, punishment for fallen angels, aliens mating with ape-like early humans.
It's a complete rewrite of theology through an alien lens.
And it doesn't stop at narratives. Architecture gets pulled into. Church spires, some argue they're just earthly copies of the gods' rockets that landed back then.
Seriously, spires as rockets.
That's the claim. And pulpit steps.
Yeah.
Not functional, apparently, but Jacob's ladder, or maybe rope ladders the gods used to climb into their spaceships before flying off.
Okay, that's reaching.
It demonstrates the pattern, though. This consistent reinterpretation of ancient symbols, architecture, narratives through this modern, technological, often extraterrestrial filter. Instead of accepting their deeply embedded cultural, religious, and historical meanings, it consistently undervalues the symbolic world, the complex beliefs, and frankly, the intellectual capacity of ancient peoples. ##Shake3, decoding ancient Egypt's alien footprints.
Okay, let's shift gears from the Bible and head over to ancient Egypt, which, let's face it, with its massive monuments, weird art, advanced knowledge, it's always been a magnet for these theories, hasn't it?
Absolutely. Egypt is ground zero for many ancient astronaut claims. They see those wonders and think, no way humans did this alone.
So our first case study, the infamous Dendera light bulb. Down in a crypt in the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, there are these reliefs. They've become a real centerpiece for proponents.
I know the ones. They do look peculiar at first glance.
Right. The claim is they depict a large, transparent, pear-shaped object. Inside, there's a snake-like figure that's supposedly the filament. The bulb is attached to a lotus flower, the socket, which connects via its stem, the cable, to a G-jud pillar.
Which they say is the power source, a generator.
Exactly. Proponents, like von Däniken, argue this is clearly a large-scale electric lighting device, like a giant ancient light bulb. And their main supporting argument often comes down to the absence of soot.
The soot argument, because tombs are decorated but not blackened by torches.
Precisely. They say the lack of soot on ceilings in finely decorated tombs implies a soot-free light source must have been used. And what's soot-free? Electricity.
Okay, but the Egyptological interpretation of those Dendera reliefs, it's overwhelmingly unambiguous, widely accepted, and it leaves absolutely no room for ancient electric light bulbs.
So what are we looking at then?
It's a standard, well-understood mythological depiction from the Ptolemaic period, which is actually quite late in Egyptian history. The bulb isn't glass, it's an allegory. It represents the womb of the sky goddess Nut, symbolizing creation, or sometimes the primordial lotus flower emerging from the waters of creation.
Okay, womb or lotus. What about the snake?
The snake inside is the god Harsamtus, a form of Horus. He represents the rising sun being born at dawn, and the G-jud pillar, the supposed generator. That's one of the most ancient and common symbols in Egypt. It represents stability, specifically the backbone of the god Osiris, a powerful symbol of resurrection.
So it's all mythology and symbolism.
Completely. And crucially, the hieroglyphic inscriptions around these reliefs explicitly describe this exact mythological narrative. They talk about Harsamtus rising from the lotus. The text confirms the interpretation. There's no mystery there for Egyptologists. And as for the absence of soot argument, which sounds compelling, it's actually easily refuted by what we know about ancient Egyptian practices.
How did they light those tombs then?
Several ways. They could use high-quality oils like castor or sesame oil, which produce very little smoke compared to cheaper stuff. They also knew that adding salt to the fuel reduces soot even further.
Practical chemistry.
Exactly. And probably most effectively, they used a system of highly polished copper or bronze mirrors to reflect sunlight deep into the tomb interiors. We found evidence of this. Some tombs even show signs of temporary lamps used during carving and painting, which were then removed.
Makes sense.
And fundamentally, from an archaeological standpoint, if they had electricity, where's the evidence? Where are the wires? The glass shards from broken bulbs? The metal filaments? The sockets? Nothing like that has ever been found anywhere in Egypt.
So, no physical evidence.
Zero. This is what archaeologist Ken Feder perfectly calls the ink blot hypothesis. Observers project modern meaning onto ambiguous ancient art. You see what you expect or want to see, not what's actually there in its original context.
That really clarifies the Dendera reliefs. Okay, let's turn to another visual mystery from Egypt that pops up all the time, the Abydos helicopter hieroglyphs.
Ah, yes, those are striking.
They really are. These carvings, found at the Temple of Seti in Abydos, at first glance, they look uncannily like modern aircraft. You see stakes that look like a helicopter, a submarine, maybe even a plane. It's weird.
It is weird visually, absolutely. And it's a perfect example of how our brains find patterns and how time can create illusions. The scholarly explanation here is actually quite elegant, and it's a classic case of something called a palimpsest.
Palimpsest. That's like scraped parchment, right?
Usually, yes. But here it applies to stone carving. The original inscriptions were carved during the reign of Pharaoh Seti I. Later, his son, Ramesses II, took over. His workers plastered over Seti III's hieroglyphs and carved new ones for Ramesses II right on top.
Okay, so layers of text.
Exactly. Now, fast forward 3,000 years. That plaster has gradually eroded and fallen away in patches. So what we see today is this accidental, confusing overlap of the original symbols underneath and the later symbols on top.
Ah, so the helicopter isn't one symbol.
No. It's created, for instance, by the hieroglyph for bow, part of Seti III's title, overlapping with the hieroglyph for two arms, part of Ramesses II's title. When they overlap just right, boom, it looks like a helicopter. Egyptologists can actually read both sets of inscriptions perfectly fine. They translate to standard royal titles. There's no mystery about ancient aircraft. It's just pareidolia seeing familiar shapes in random patterns caused by erosion.
Wow. That's fascinating how simple erosion creates such a convincing illusion. Okay, finally, let's quickly touch on the general claims about the Egyptian pyramids. Ancient astronaut theorists often argue Egypt just appeared as this fantastic, ready-made civilization, right? No clear transitions.
Yeah, the out-of-nowhere argument.
Implying extraterrestrial help was needed for Giza because the scale, the precision, the alignments, just too much for early humans.
Thus, the archaeological evidence completely demolishes that ready-made idea. It shows a clear, long cultural development, a continuous process in Egypt. Tomb construction didn't just pop up as pyramids.
How did it start?
Simply, earth mounds over bedrock burials. Then those evolved into single-story mud brick rectangles called mastabas.
Mastabas, right.
Then came the big innovation, the stepped pyramid, like Djoser's step pyramid at Saqqara, famously built by the architect Imhotep. We know his name.
Mm-hmm.
That pyramid was basically stacked mastabas, an experiment.
So learning and evolving.
Exactly. It was Pharaoh Sneferu, Khufu's father, who then pioneered the true pyramid shape. He built a few, like the bent pyramid and the red pyramid, learning as he went. Then came the Giza pyramids by his son Khufu. It's a clear progression. We even have direct evidence, like that papyrus logbook found recently, kept by an official named Merer.
What did it say?
It detailed the daily logistics of shipping limestone for the Great Pyramid, how workers were housed, fed, real practical stuff. And this persistent claim that moving the massive stones was impossible for humans. Well, modern experiments keep disproving that. Archaeologists have successfully moved replica megaliths weighing up to 40 tons using only ancient tech ropes, levers, sledges, ramps, manpower.
40 tons is huge.
It is. And it strongly suggests even larger stones were possible with enough people, clever engineering, and time, which the Egyptians definitely had. The idea that they needed alien help just doesn't hold up against the evidence of their own gradual, brilliant development.
It really is incredible what ancient people achieved when you look closely. Okay, let's shift focus now from Egypt to other amazing ancient structures around the globe. These also often get pulled into ancient astronaut theories, presented as sort of slam-dunk proof of outside help. Let's start with the Moai of Easter Island, those giant heads. The claim here is pretty straightforward. Building and moving these massive statues, some over 75 tons, moved miles from the quarry that was supposedly just beyond the capabilities of the native Rapa Nui people. Therefore, aliens must have helped.
The sheer scale seems impossible to some. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you move something that big, that far, with limited resources?
Interestingly, the Rapa Nui themselves had their own explanation in their oral traditions. They believed their chiefs and priests used a spiritual power called mana to make the statues literally walk upright to their final spots.
Walk. That sounds pretty mystical.
Right, and ancient alien theorists often jump on that, saying it's just a primitive way of describing advanced tech, like anti-gravity levitation or something.
Misinterpreting folklore as misunderstood technology.
Exactly. But scholarly research and actual experiments offer a very different but equally ingenious human explanation. Back in 1982, a Czech engineer, Pavel, worked with just 16 people.
16 people for a giant statue.
Yep. They used ropes and a rocking motion, they called it the refrigerator method, to successfully walk a concrete replica Moai forward, inch by inch, rocking it side to side.
So they made it walk, just like the legend said.
Precisely. It showed that moving these massive statues was feasible with a relatively small, organized group aligning perfectly with the Rapa Nui folklore. No aliens needed, just clever mechanics. Now, there's that other popular theory, pushed by Jared Diamond among others, that the Rapa Nui destroyed themselves through deforestation, cutting down all the trees to use as log rollers for the statues, leading to ecological collapse.
The ecocide theory was very influential.
But even that has been largely countered by more recent research. Studies found the island's palm trees were often kind of mushy inside, not great for robust rollers, and the peak population was probably much smaller than previously thought.
So what did cause the population decline then?
It's now widely accepted. It was primarily due to devastating European contact. Spanish ships brought diseases like smallpox. And then, crucially, there were horrific Peruvian and Spanish slave raids in the 1800s. They abducted up to half the island's population. That's what caused the collapse, not self-destruction from moving statues. And it's really important to credit the Rapa Nui archaeologist Sergio Rapuhawa, who first found evidence for the walking theory from oral history and archaeology. He's often overlooked in English sources.
That's a crucial correction. Contact and exploitation, not necessarily internal failure.
A really powerful correction. Okay, let's move to another famous megalithic site, Stonehenge, in England.
Always a crowd pleaser for mysteries.
Right. The claim here is that building it presented just insurmountable challenges for Neolithic people, moving those huge sarsen stones up to 30 tons from quarries 20 miles away.
And the smaller blue stones, even further, right, from Wales.
Exactly. Blue stones weighing 2 to 5 tons, brought over 150 miles. Plus, the incredibly precise astronomical alignments. All this, they argue, implies advanced external aid was needed. Aliens again, perhaps.
But again, the archaeology consistently points towards human solutions. Solutions that are awe-inspiring, sure, but don't require calling in ET. Excavations at Stonehenge have found tons of evidence of the work.
Like what?
Large quantities of sarsen and bluestone waste material chippings, flakes, and lots of broken hammerstones of various sizes found right near the monument where they were shaping the stones. We can see the tools they used.
Hammerstones for shaping massive rocks.
Yep. Rough shaping with bigger ones, finer dressing and smoothing with smaller ones. And critically, as we mentioned with the pyramids, numerous experiments replicating ancient tech have successfully moved replica megaliths up to 40 tons, using just human power, ropes, wooden rollers, or sledges on prepared tracks. It shows these feats were absolutely within Neolithic capabilities, given enough time, social organization, and clever engineering. We've extensively studied and replicated the likely techniques for quarrying, dressing, and erecting those stones. It's a testament to human will and skill, not alien intervention. Now let's jump over to South America. Puma Punku, part of the Tiwanaku site in Bolivia. This one gets cited a lot, and the claims are particularly dramatic.
What's the big deal with Puma Punku?
Proponents focus on the incredibly complex shapes and the almost unbelievable millimetric precision of the hard andesite blocks. They have these intricate interlocking features. Plus, they had to transport enormous sandstone terraces weighing 130 to 180 tons.
Whoa, 180 tons.
Exactly. Yeah. So the argument is impossible with ancient stone tools. Must be alien technology, maybe lasers or something. They often present this false dichotomy, either primitive stone hammers or ET lasers.
Ignoring everything in between.
Precisely. It deliberately overlooks the vast middle ground of human ingenuity and potentially lost but entirely human technologies. However, there's some fascinating, really groundbreaking research offering a plausible, high-tech human solution. No aliens needed. Some researchers, notably material scientist Jay Davidovitz, have proposed that the blocks of Puma Punku weren't actually carved from solid stone.
Not carved. Then what?
They might have been cast using a sophisticated form of geopolymer concrete.
Cast? Like concrete?
Kind of. The theory is the Tiwanaku people figured out how to break down local volcanic rock into a fine powder, mix it with some kind of organic binder, maybe from plants, maybe even guano.
Bird droppings.
Possibly. And then poured this slurry into molds. It would then set hard, like artificial stone. This would elegantly explain the incredible uniformity, the precision, the complex interlocking shapes. You could replicate them perfectly from molds.
That would explain a lot. Is there evidence for this?
There is supporting scientific analysis, though it's still a hypothesis. Thin sections of samples from Puma Punku blocks show this weird, thick, fluidal red clay cement matrix. It's not typical for natural sandstone, suggesting it's artificial geopolymer concrete. Chemical analysis has also detected organic matter, specifically nitrogen consistent with plant binders or guano. It implies an organomineral binder was used. They also found higher sodium levels, maybe from using natron, a natural salt, as an alkaline activator in the mix. And crucially, the site has loads of unfinished stones, often ignored by the theorists, which show step-by-step human construction processes, quarrying, rough shaping consistent with human methods before any casting might have occurred.
So a sophisticated but human chemical technology.
Exactly. And what's really remarkable across all these sites, Egypt, Easter Island, the Andes, is that as our archaeological methods get better, as our understanding of ancient human capabilities grows, we keep finding these increasingly complex, elegant human solutions. It really raises an important question, doesn't it?
Which is?
Why do we so often default to assuming extraordinary achievements must come from outside, non-human sources? It maybe speaks to a fundamental bias in how we view the past, consistently undervaluing the incredible potential and collective effort of our own ancestors. #V, the methodology of ancient astronaut theory and counterarguments.
That's a really critical observation, and it leads us right into how these theories are actually constructed and presented. So having looked at these examples, let's talk about the common tactics, the rhetorical strategies used by ancient astronaut proponents, especially in popular media like that Ancient Aliens show. What makes them seem so convincing to so many people?
Well, a key concept they use is the out-of-place artifact, right?
Yeah.
An object or artwork supposedly too advanced for its time.
Yes, the ooh part. They take genuinely ambiguous ancient art or legends and just reinterpret them to fit these ET contact stories, which ties right back into what Ken Federer called the ink blot hypothesis.
Seeing what you want to see.
Exactly. Observers project their own modern meaning onto ambiguous ancient stuff. Like seeing shapes in clouds, the meaning isn't in the cloud, it's in your head, your pattern recognition. Once you see that bias, you spot it everywhere in these claims. And that Ancient Aliens show, it's kind of notorious for what critics call fire hosing.
Fire hosing.
Yeah, just relentlessly blasting the viewer with a mix of fact and wild speculation, claim after claim, really fast without much time to think critically. The narration is dominated by leading questions, isn't it? Could it be that? Is it possible that?
And the answer is always.
Ancient alien theorists say yes.
Right. It frames the hypothesis as this legitimate competing school of thought, giving it this false equivalence with actual science.
And context often gets lost. Completely. Evidence is presented in isolation, ripped from its archaeological, historical, cultural context, which of course leads to misinterpretations. Even respected academics like the geologist Robert Schout,
Who works on the Sphinx dating, yeah.
He's publicly said the producers edited his interviews to take his statements totally out of context, twisting them to fit their narrative, divorcing them from the actual questions he was asked.
That's pretty damning, manipulating expert testimony.
And another really problematic tendency is the constant dismissal of indigenous capabilities. It's this recurring theme, minimizing or just outright denying the achievements, the intelligence, the engineering skills of non-Western cultures, implying they couldn't possibly have built Teotihuacan or carved the Moai on their own.
It subtly suggests only external advanced forces, often implicitly European or alien, could be responsible for great works outside the Greco-Roman world.
Exactly. It unfortunately can align with some pretty nasty ideologies like white supremacist or imperialist views, even if unintentionally. It just strips ancient cultures of their due credit. And finally, how do they handle rejection from mainstream science?
The conspiracy angle.
Right. Proponents often frame academic rejection as proof of a conspiracy. They paint themselves as this oppressed minority of academics or mavericks fighting a dogmatic establishment.
So critics aren't just wrong, they're closed-minded. Or actively hiding the truth.
Pretty much. It insulates their theories from scientific criticism. Lack of acceptance isn't seen as a failure of evidence, but as proof of a cover-up by the academic elite. It plays right into that desire for hidden knowledge, for secret truths the establishment doesn't want you to know.
And this brings us to a really important scientific counter-explanation for some of these claims, especially those involving seemingly anomalous ancient knowledge. The cultural contamination theory.
Cultural contamination, how does that work?
Let's revisit the Dogon example, the Sirius mystery. Robert Temple claimed they had ancient knowledge of Sirius B, Jupiter's moon, Saturn's rings, stuff Western science only confirmed later with telescopes.
Right, the core mystery.
But mainstream anthropologists and skeptics point out something crucial. The Dogon's supposed astronomical knowledge perfectly mirrors Western astronomical knowledge from the late 19th and early 20th centuries, specifically.
Perfectly mirrors it. How so?
Well, they supposedly knew about Jupiter's 4 big moons and Saturn's rings, but not about Uranus or Neptune. This exactly matches what Western astronomers knew during that specific period, before the outer planets were fully understood or widely known about. So the cultural contamination theory suggests that a European visitor, maybe a missionary, a French colonial official, maybe even the anthropologist Marcel Griaule himself during his fieldwork, likely shared contemporary astronomical knowledge with the Dogon in the early 20th century.
Ah, so the Dogon learned it from Europeans.
That's the most plausible explanation. The Dogon have an incredibly rich, complex, and adaptable mythology. They likely integrated these fascinating new astronomical facts into their existing belief system, weaving them into their cosmology. Then later, they relayed this modified tradition back to Griaule, perhaps presenting it as ancient knowledge. It makes much more sense than aliens who could cross interstellar space, but somehow had an incomplete map of our solar system, knowing only what Westerners knew in, say, 1920.
It highlights how cultures exchange and adapt information.
Exactly. And all of this brings us back to a fundamental principle in science, especially in archaeology: uniformitarianism.
Uniformitarianism. Bit of a mouthful.
It is. But the core idea is simple. Exhaust all natural, observable, known explanations before you resort to extraordinary ones. Basically, don't postulate miracles unless they're necessary.
Use Occam's razor. Find the simplest explanation first.
Pretty much. It's about rigorous, logical reasoning based on evidence. For ancient mysteries, it means we first look at human ingenuity, known technologies, natural processes, historical context, see if those can plausibly explain it. We don't immediately jump to aliens or magic. It values careful investigation and avoids premature conclusions, giving human intelligence and effort the credit they deserve.
That principle, uniformitarianism, feels really important, a disciplined way to look at these things. So, stepping back, what does all this mean? Not just for ancient claims, but for how we think about extraterrestrial contact generally, and how we humans even interpret information. Let's broaden out to the actual scientific search for extraterrestrial intelligence, SETI, and the huge challenges of real contact. SETI research strongly suggests, doesn't it, that if we ever do encounter an alien intelligence, it's most likely going to be non-physical.
Yeah, no little green men stepping out of a saucer, probably.
Right, more likely a message like a radio signal traveling across those vast interstellar distances.
No.
Or maybe detecting a remote probe, because the distances are just mind-boggling, and the time lags.
Signals traveling at light speed still take centuries, millennia maybe.
Exactly. Which means a real-time back-and-forth conversation like we're having now, pretty much impossible. And that leads to the huge challenge of actually deciphering any alien message we might get. Unlike cracking, say, Egyptian hieroglyphs using the Rosetta Stone.
Where you had a known language alongside the unknown one.
Precisely. In an interstellar context, there'd be no Rosetta Stone, no bilingual text, no shared cultural context to even start from, language, images. They're deeply culturally embedded, right? Arbitrary. The word dog has no inherent dogness.
Meaning isn't universal.
So this assumption of a psychic unity of all intelligent species, the idea that alien minds would think or perceive or communicate like us, share our logic, our senses, how we conceptualize reality, that's a massive, unproven assumption. And ironically, humans are apparently very bad at making sense of non-human communicative systems, even with animals right here on Earth like great apes.
We often underestimate them or misinterpret them.
So interstellar communication would be like combining ethnology dealing with huge cultural differences and ethology dealing with profound biological and cognitive differences. Aliens might not even perceive reality through vision or sound like us. They might exist or communicate in ways we can't even imagine.
And these massive challenges in thinking about future alien communication actually shed a lot of light on the human cognitive biases that make ancient alien theories so appealing right now here on Earth.
How so?
Well, take our human agency detection device. It's this idea that humans are instinctively, subconsciously attuned to things that have a personal source. We're wired to look for intention, purpose, a creator.
Seeing faces in the clouds again.
Sort of, but deeper. It can lead us to see deliberate design or intervention where there's only natural processes or coincidence. It's why someone might see a spaceship or an advanced tool in an ambiguous rock formation or an ancient carving. Our brains are looking for signs of intelligence, sometimes too eagerly. And that ties right back into pareidolia, like the Abydos helicopter. Our brain's almost irresistible urge to find familiar patterns in randomness. We see what we expect or hope to see. And then there's the powerful psychological appeal of hidden knowledge.
Wanting to be in on the secret.
Exactly. As one scholar put it, truth is boring and fantasy is exciting. People have this deep longing to be in the know, to possess secrets others don't, It makes them feel special, important.
And susceptible to theories claiming mainstream science is hiding something.
Precisely. If you feel you don't have the tools to critically evaluate a complex theory, you might just assume a compelling documentary or book is accurate, especially if it claims the establishment is covering things up. It feeds a desire for wonder, maybe mixed with a bit of distrust for authority.
So when we actually strip away these speculative alien narratives, when we look at these ancient mysteries with a more critical, evidence-based eye, what we often find is something arguably even more profound, isn't it?
I think so.
We find incredible human ingenuity, remarkable adaptation, extraordinarily complex cultural and technological development happening over millennia. These mysteries stop pointing to aliens and start becoming these powerful testaments to what ancient human societies were capable of. It forces us to appreciate their sophistication, not by diminishing them, but by celebrating what they actually achieved.
And that, I think, summarizes our deep dive today. While the idea of ancient alien visits is undeniably captivating, it sparks curiosity, fires the imagination.
Yeah.
Mainstream archaeology and science consistently provide human-centric, often elegant, and increasingly detailed explanations for these supposed mysteries.
Explanations grounded in evidence.
Exactly. And these explanations not only resolve the puzzles, but crucially, they honor the intelligence, the adaptability, the sheer hard work and skill of ancient cultures, rather than attributing their achievements to outsiders. The real story of human history is, frankly, far more impressive on its own merits.
And that's the real value here, isn't it? The importance of critical thinking, questioning assumptions, patiently seeking out well-evidenced explanations, even if they aren't as flashy as ET intervention. It's about appreciating the incredible power of human ingenuity through the ages.
Which brings us to maybe a final provocative thought for you, our listener, to mull over. This raises an important question. If our interpretations of ancient artifacts and texts are so prone to projecting our modern understandings and biases onto them, how might our current search for extraterrestrial intelligence be similarly constrained by our own very human expectations and biases?
Are we only looking for signals we would send?
Exactly. Are we only looking for what we can imagine or what we would build? What might we be missing, perhaps right under our noses, simply because we expect alien contact or alien intelligence to look or act in a certain way, a way we can easily comprehend? It's a profound thought, really. It asks us to try and truly expand our imaginative and scientific horizons about what intelligence might even mean out there.
A profound thought indeed. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into ancient encounters and modern interpretations. We really encourage you to continue exploring reliable sources, keep asking those big questions, and always try to think critically about the information you encounter.